The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association is providing this podcast as a public service for informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the host or guest of this podcast are their own and may not reflect those of the BSSA, employees of the BSSA, or any of its officials. Any reference to a specific product, entity, opinion, issue, or other such item does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation thereof by the BSSA. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association.
People want to know the sheriff. They want to know that you're out there working. But more importantly, they want to know if they call, they're going to get a response. And I campaigned on the fact that we're trying to make Muskingum County a safe place to live and work and raise a family. And that's what I think drives me.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast, where we'll introduce sheriffs and deputies across Ohio. During this conversation, you'll get to know the men and women serving you and hear all about the good work being done in the Buckeye State every day. Now let's join your host, Paulding County Sheriff Jason Landers, and today's special guest.
Welcome to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. We're here today with Sheriff Matt Lutz from Muskingum County, Ohio. I'm Jason Landers, the sheriff in Paulding County, the host of today's podcast. Well, we're on the phone today with Sheriff Matt Lutz. How's it going down there in you're southeast, east of Columbus, about an hour in Muskingum County over there in Zanesville?
Yeah, Jason, thanks for having me on, man. This is really excited to talk to you and bring some southeastern Ohio stuff onto the podcast. And yeah, we're about 45 minutes to an hour east of Columbus, right on I-70. I-70 goes right through our county, and we're the fifth largest in the state with territory with 680 square miles. So we don't have the large population, but we're a large county, and we have a lot of farmers over here, and our fair's getting ready to come up here in a couple of weeks, so we're getting pretty excited about that.
That's cool. We were just down that way. My wife and I we were making our way from Columbus east over into West Virginia to Pennsylvania, and, two different landscapes for you and I. I'm up here in the northwest corner, the flattest county in the state of Ohio, say the powers that be. We get into Muskingum County, and I-70, as you kind of get in, you have some starting to get into the hills and those types of things as you work your way over towards the state line.
Yeah, it's pretty hilly over here. Like I said, we're a large agricultural county. We have a lot of farming. We used to be one of the top every year in deer hunting. We had a lot of influx of visitors that would come in and deer hunt in this county. We're top 5, probably top 10 now. But yeah, it starts getting into the hills, and it's definitely different territory than what you see over there.
Yeah, and it's funny when you think about hunting and the comments you made when Sheriff John Hinton was one of my prior guests on the podcast here, and he came up in person, and when he got to my office, one of the very first things out of his mouth was, "Where do you all deer hunt?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Where do the deer hide? You don't have any trees." I said, "No, we have. Look at that woods right there." And he says, "Man, that's not woods. That's like a patch of trees." He goes, I don't understand where the deer hide. You guys deer hunt?" I said, "Oh, yeah, man. They have a lot of deer hunters up this way," but kind of funny. Well, Matt, let's spend just a few minutes talking about you. Tell your listeners a vision for this podcast is connecting sheriffs and deputies and employees of the sheriff in all 88 counties with their communities. Talk a little bit about you, where you're from, where did you go to high school, how did you get where you're at today, and we'll just break that down here for a few minutes.
Yeah, well, that's a long story, Jason. I don't know if we have enough time on this podcast. But so I graduated out of the little high school, Philo High School, back in 1986, and it's just about 15 minutes south of Zanesville. And so went there, was raised in Philo all my life. My mom and dad built a house there in '69, and that's where I live. Still live there. And of course, my father was in law enforcement, and then my mom bought a restaurant in a neighboring town of Duncan Falls in 1984, and she ran that for 24 years. And so went to Philo High School. Mom started me in kindergarten when I was 4 years old because I wanted to go with a group of kids in Philo. And so that meant I graduated in May of '86. I was 17. And so I didn't turn 18 till that September. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Had a couple chances to go to college, but I didn't really want to do that at that time. And so, of course, Dad had been at the office since 1978, and so I decided to go to the police academy. And I went to the police academy, got enrolled, finished it in December of '86. I started working as a security guard at Sears at a local mall here in Zanesville. And I also worked for the assistant prosecutor in the city, and I would interview people when they come in to file complaints. And got to talk to them and learn how to take their statements, and I would do some typing. I tell people all the time, my mom made me take one class in high school that was typing, and I've used it more than anything else I ever learned in school. And so did that, and did that for a couple of years, went back to Zane State College. It's kind of a college here, local college here, and attended a two-year associate's degree, and was doing that when Sheriff Gibson decided he was putting on 3 people in '89, and wanted to go into the jail, but all he had was a dispatch spot. So I took the dispatch spot and worked it for about 6 months, and then went into the jail. And that's kind of how my career started. And, you know, I kind of tell people all the time, I started really at the bottom with the dispatcher spot, which, you know, anymore is one of the most important spots in your office. And started there, learned how to do that job, and then went to the jail and just kind of came up through and worked myself all the way up to through the office.
Yeah, you talk about getting started. I just released a kid, he's not a kid, young man, into the patrol division, started in corrections. And in that transition period, before he started on the patrol side on his FTO, we put him into the communications for probably about 4 weeks. And his FTO guy was telling me, he's like, what an advantage that was for him from an FTO perspective, training new deputies. From his time in communications. Now, he spent 2 years in corrections, which is a huge, I think, a huge advance for a patrol deputy when they understand the operations of the jail. I mean, I have some that came from the jail, and I have some that went straight to the patrol side. But for you and your experience, it sounds like it was a great advantage for your career and your progression through the office by having worked in those different positions.
Yeah, I think when you don't get that experience, you kind of don't have the respect of those employees, and you kind of don't know what they do. And so, you know, it's kind of easy when we're out here on the road and you're talking back to them because it's the only thing you have to do, where they're worried about, you know, maybe 6, 7 different officers at one time. Plus they have all the 911 phones and all the regular phones and all the computer work. And it just, you know, I think it brings more reality to you if you've had that experience. And I agree with you. Same thing with the jail. You know, that's how we start down here. I have a jail that we're rated about 180 prisoners. And that's where most of our people start when we hire them, either as civilians and they go into the academy, or they come out of the academy and they start in the jail waiting on road spots to open. But I tell there's employees that it's a great place to learn how to treat people and how to be treated. And, you know, you have that relationship with those prisoners, and, you know, you got to tell them it's nothing personal. You know, they made a mistake. They're in there serving their time. And, you know, you learn those coping skills, you learn those communication skills. And I tell them all the time, if you do your job right in there, a lot of times you get respect from those prisoners. And then when they get out and they see you on the street as a road cop later on in life, you're going to get that respect out there, and they're going to treat you better. So it's definitely a very valuable learning tool, and it's kind of good that we have that ability to train right there and get to know what the employee is and let them have those life experiences before they come out.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think one of the toughest jobs, we have a lot of tough jobs, and communications, being a dispatcher, one of the toughest jobs by far when you talk about stress on the job and decision-making and multitasking and all the things. But when you deal with people in confined spaces, every time I hire a new corrections officer and it gets to me, when they get through the panel and all those things, and it gets to me and I have this conversation, it's one place. Obviously, we can hire someone with ultimately no training, civilian, off the street. I try to talk a lot, and you can only paint so much of a picture as to what it's like to work with someone in confined spaces. Most people that don't want to be there, the substance abuse that we see, just recently in our facility with a person that came in that was under the influence of methamphetamines, and Their compliance a lot of times isn't on point. They have no pain compliance when you're trying to get someone under control so they're not a threat to themselves or staff or anyone else. It's really tough. So if you can make it in corrections, to your point, and do your job well, then we see as administrative people or supervisors that promote and move people around laterally or advance them and bring them out to the road, if you have the skill set to do that. And I think it's a huge advantage. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I agree, Jason. I think I think it's a huge, valuable learning tool, and like you said, I mean, when you get new people into the profession, and anymore in hiring people, we're all looking for good people. I tell people all the time, right now we're just looking for good people that want to show up for work, be respectful, be accountable, and we'll teach you everything you need to know to do this job. And I agree. I mean, I think the jail is a valuable learning tool, and you get to make an impression on administration on how you do your job in there. And as you said, that controlled environment, you got to be on there, be able to go in there and do that job. And again, it comes back to just how you treat people. And I was raised. My dad always taught me, treat people like you would want to be treated, and don't ever ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do or haven't done yourself. And I think, when you go in there and you come across there's situations and everything, and I think you got a chance to make a name for yourself and show people that you can do this job.
Absolutely, Matt. Let's take a step back. We're in this portion right now as I lay out the format of the podcast to connect you to your community. And we talked a little bit off air before we started recording, and a huge part of Matt Lutz and who you are in Muskingum County and law enforcement, in particularly the office of sheriff. You've mentioned him a couple times, your father. Gives me a little bit of goosebumps just asking this opening question here, but you said you'd be comfortable talking about this, and I'm sure you've talked about a lot throughout your life as Matt Lutz, and specifically as your job as the sheriff of the county. Tell the listeners a little bit about your dad, and it's just be interesting to hear a little bit about your dad.
Yeah, buddy, I tell you, it's probably one of the hardest things that I ever comes up that I have to talk about. We talked a little bit about, I told you there off air that we did a podcast the other day, and we talked a little bit about it. So Dad started, it's really crazy because he worked at a plant down here in down at Philo, just south of Zanesville. We had two plants, an alloy plant and a high power plant that produced different stuff. And he went to work there, and in 1978, he decided to give up the job. $12 an hour is what he was making, which at that time was huge money. And he went to work at the sheriff's office for like $3 or $4 an hour. Wow. And people thought, man, you're crazy. Well, in 80 or 81, the plant shut down. And by 84, he was had been promoted to sergeant and then up to even a lieutenant. And so it didn't take him very long. Of course, at that time, I think the office only had maybe 50 employees. And he just was a guy that, as I go around and talk to people now, they'll tell you he was just a guy that, like, one guy told me, if you'd never met Mike Lutz when you left the conversation, you acted like you knew him for 10 years. And was always there willing to help. He was pretty aggressive. He was very nasty as far as don't mess with him. He could handle any of the situations that came in front of him, but man, he was very genuine. Stories I've seen personally of him stopping at McDonald's and dropping off food to a homeless guy, just trying to help out. So very, very, he was very well respected in the profession here and at the office. And of course, then I was raised. I was 10 years old when he went to the office, and then of course, all through high school. Growing up under that, and Mom bought the restaurant in '84, and so I think in her mind she kind of was trying to steer me towards being a business owner and going to the restaurant type thing, but just really didn't get into that. And so then in '89, or '86 when I graduated, didn't really know what I wanted to do, and seeing what he was doing, and that's when we talked about going to the academy and didn't know if I wanted to make it a career or not, but, ended up, like I said, getting hired there by Sheriff Gibson in '89, and it just really stuck. Part of that too was Dad was on the fire department as a volunteer, and I spent a lot of time at the fire department with him, and then Mom was on the squad, and so I joined as a 16-year-old junior fireman and became fire chief, and so I've always kind of had that sense of serving, that purpose to serve instilled in me, and seeing what both of them did as a business owner and both of them running as volunteers, and then with that in the law enforcement profession. And so just kind of worked out to where it stuck on me, and of course was very well known in the community for a 16-year career. And then of course he was killed in '94, and then had to make a decision. I took 2 or 3 months off to see if I was going to stay in it. I had like 5 years in at that point, and just decided that that's what he would want me to do. And so stayed in it, and it's been a heck of a career decision and a career choice, and couldn't imagine myself doing anything else. And so get through the career, and as I've had started in dispatch, went to the jail, worked my way out to the road, became patrol sergeant, patrol lieutenant, ended up as a detective sergeant in charge of our drug unit. And then when it came time to in '08, Sheriff Stevenson was going to step down, and so I left, took a chief of police position, a small 3-man department to run for sheriff, and then got elected in '08 and took over in '09. And so been 16 years as sheriff, and I can tell you right now, without Mom and Dad, I'd never be where I was at right now. So he's been a big influence. Still remembered in the community. I still have people come up to me. He's been gone 30 years. That was July 12th. And so he was killed on July 12th, '94. So it's been 30 years, and I still to this day will have somebody walk up and say something about him. I've been told, and now Jason, you might not agree with this, but I've been told to get better looking as I go, and they tell me that I look more like him every day as I get older. So big influence on my life, big influence on this community, and almost everything I have to them.
Now, you got to work alongside your father, is that correct?
Yeah. So 5 years. 5 years. So in fact, I dispatched for him. I was when I was in dispatch and going on different shifts, I worked the swing shift, and of course he was either day shift or lieutenant on either lieutenant or day shift or midnights. And so whatever shift I was on, sometimes I was actually dispatching for him, and rode to work with him a couple different times in the cruiser. And then, like I said, 5 years got to work with him.
And that day, July 12th, '94, that was a line of duty death?
Yeah. So, he was working midnight shift, and about 4 a.m. there was a very well-known suspect in our community, been in a lot of trouble before, and he tried to, he broke into a certified gas station. He went through the bathroom door, went over into the ceiling and in to steal, cigarettes and beer out of the certified station down on Maysville Pike. And some kids delivering the newspapers heard the commotion, and there was several witnesses that even at that time in the morning that were out with newspaper stuff. And then he responded. He was really close to the call, and then got into a pretty horrific fight with this guy, and the guy disarmed him and took his life there at the scene. So it was again, pretty horrific thing, and really turned our community upside down.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you for having the strength to talk about that. I mean, even though 30 years is a long time, I'm sure in a lot of sense it seems like it was yesterday for you. Let's turn focus just a little bit more, continue to talk about Matt Lutz and who you are. Hobbies and interests. What when you and your wife, you care to talk about your family at all and give them a plug? I know, but I'm not going to share their names. Feel free to talk about your family if you like. What interests, Matt? What do you do when you're not wearing that black uniform and sitting behind the desk? What keeps you busy?
Well, Dave, that's a great question. Of course, I got my wife, Sandy, and we've got 2 kids, Adam and Trey. And Abby's got two precious little boys that we're grandparents of. So we spend a lot of time with them. They're not real close, but we get to see them about every other week, every 2 weeks. get to spoil the heck out of them and send them home as most grandparents do. My son Trey is in Westerville, living in Westerville, working in Dublin. He's a computer software specialist, a maintenance guy, and he's got a little girlfriend, and they're living up there. And so that's been a vital part of us as our family, and we've enjoyed spending time with them. I coached, as you have coached. I coached Abby all the way up through from like 5 years old in sports and softball and basketball, and then coached Trey up through in football and basketball and baseball. And so really spent a lot of time with them on the road and being around them and enjoying them. And now my one grandson's 4 and the other one's 2.5. And they pretty much keep me pretty busy when they're in town. I have to go back to work to get a break when they leave. But that's a big component of it. I love to golf. We started, had to run a campaign for re-election in 2020, and we started sponsoring golf outings and going to golf outings and getting our name out there, and just caught on to it. It's something me and my son can do together and love to do. And so started getting a little bit better. Still got to work on the consistency part of it, but it's gotten a little bit more fun each time I get a little better at it. And so playing a couple golf leagues and able to get away for that. And then, of course, we have another hobby. It's a side-by-side, something, Jason, you might not know about me. I used to drive a dirt track late model car. And my dad and I started that back when I was 16 years old. That would have been back probably, 83, 84. He drove a car for a little bit, and then I drove a dirt track late model car for about 3-4 years, and had a lot of fun with that, but we got out of it. And so I bought a side-by-side in 18, and we do a lot of off-roading. Group of us, there's probably 10 to 12 people that go riding out of town. We've been to Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia, and we've got a place about 45 minutes from Zanesville that we go ride a lot. And so that's just fun for me to, get a little bit of a need for speed and get away from the phone and get away from the crowds. And you're on the trails and a lot of good scenery, and we just have a lot of fun with it, especially when we get stuck in the mud and have to lynch each other out. So we kind of enjoy that. And I still heavily campaign, still like going to the different events that only a politician knows how many events you have in your community. And so we still enjoy getting out and seeing people in the community and getting out and supporting all the local events. So that probably takes up most of my time when I'm not at work.
It's interesting. I think back, we met each other several years ago now, how much we have in common, not knowing each other. We're several hours from each other as far as where we live and where we work and grew up. And you've been doing this job longer than I have, but, the coaching background, they enjoy playing golf and the outdoor recreational activities, motorcycles, side-by-sides, those types of things. I know you and I think are on the same page with some pending legislation on the House side to get some uniformity on side-by-side or UTV registration, legalization, and try to make uniform across Ohio in the revised code, where you can drive those things, where you can't, and that type of thing. Right now, it just kind of seems to be all over the place around Ohio as to who allows them to travel on the road, which BMVs will license them and which ones won't. And it's not good for everybody, and we understand it's not good for everyone. So the legislature, again, on the House side, looked at some legislation that would individualize that to each county, and rather they see fit for side-by-sides, if you say, to be on your roadways and things. But for people that have that hobby or, just the retiree that likes to go drive around and look at the deer in the field, those types of things, we see a lot of them up our way, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think Representative Kevin Miller, who was former OSP trooper, is the one that kind of started to introduce that legislation. And unfortunately, I don't know that it's taken off as fast as what everybody wanted it to. And of course, anybody that knows what's going on with the state legislature right now knows that there's a lot of stuck in the mud type projects. But we definitely need some uniformity. We definitely need to get some people on the same page in Ohio. And you're exactly right. There's there's a lot of differences going on what people think is legal, what people think aren't legal, and as I went up and testified at the State House in favor of it, I can name off 5, 6, 7 different types of vehicles that are on the roadway right now legally that aren't as safe, in my opinion, as a side-by-side. And so it definitely needs to get addressed, and it still would put the decisions back in the local flavor of city councils and county commissioners to still approve it. And again, as you said, there's different counties that have different thoughts and processes on it, but we definitely need to get the BMVs and the title offices all on the same page because it is all over the board, and there is a lot of people that are into that hobby and that sport, and I definitely think it needs addressed, and I definitely think we need to support it.
Yeah, I hope it does. I've talked with our lobbyist probably within the last 3 to 4 weeks about where that's at. I know there was another hearing that Representative Miller and I think co-sponsor Phil Plummer, retired sheriff, had another hearing on that. I watched your proponent testimony to it. I know there was a representative involved with that from the Manufacturers Association, and they don't like the idea so much, but we'll see where it's at. I keep watching that on our sites that we can watch pending legislation on. We'll see where that's at. Let's turn our focus a little bit, Matt, to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. That's the sponsor of this podcast. I know you've been, we'll say, through the chairs, and anyone that's listened to prior episodes on this podcast, you are episode number 7, by the way. Anyone that's listened to the prior 6, we talk a lot about the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, or we'll say the BSSA. Talk about your involvement with that and the positions that you've held, and then we'll talk a little bit about any committees that you chair. I know the answer to most of these things, but folks listening to this might not. So talk to us about the BSSA.
Yeah, well, I tell you, dude, just start from the beginning on that. And, of course, as I said earlier, I got hired by Sheriff Gibson, and then Sheriff Stevenson took over, and I worked for him prior to becoming sheriff. And I tell you, the BSSA couldn't have been any. That whole thing was so different between the two sheriffs, because Sheriff Gibson didn't really take part in any of it, and Sheriff Stevenson went full dive into it, became president, and really took part in it big time. And so when I took over as sheriff, and we went to our 2-week training and our 3rd-week training, there was a lot of talk about the BSSA and how much it could be for you. And I tell you what really put me on the BSSA was my neighboring sheriffs. I was very fortunate when I came in to have Sheriff McCauley in Guernsey and Sheriff Thorpe in Licking County. I had Sheriff Rogers in Shotton, and they all 3 at some point were BSSA presidents, and so really had a lot of influence on the BSSA, and so went really head first into it. I started to become actively involved in it, and then come time where they needed somebody to, as you said, go through the chairs. And so I did that, and then became president of BSSA in 2019. And I didn't know I was going to be the lucky one to be president in 19 before COVID hit in 20. And so I'm very thankful that I had to do the opportunity to do that, and to go through as president, and just be involved in everything that goes on with sheriffs in the state of Ohio. BSSA represents all 88 sheriffs and its members, and we're only as strong as the sheriffs and the members, and we have a very, very strong association right now, especially when you compare it to other state associations. I think we're one of 14 that have entire membership in the NSA, the National Sheriff's Association, as Director Cornwell, directs that, and so it really is a very strong association that has really is looked upon in the state of Ohio as a very reputable association, and a lot of times when the sheriffs speak, people listen, and that's a tribute to what Bob and Mona Cornwell do, our director and associate director of the association. It also is a tribute to what the sheriffs and their members do when we're asked to reach out to our legislators and give comments and give direction to our legislators on what we need and what we want. And so it's been a great organization. I still am part of it. I'm the chairman of the awards committee. We're tasked. We don't meet a lot, but we are tasked with every year. The sheriffs and its members will submit nominations to the awards committee, and we look at those awards and we determine who gets those awards. And so we see a lot of nominations that runs from kind of like September to September, and then we award the nominations, and then in November at the annual sheriff's conference we have a lunch on the last day, and that's where we bring in all those nominees that are available to receive their awards. We also give out a CLEM award, which is a certified law enforcement training award, and that goes to the sheriffs and members that get enough points by attending meetings every year. So we're kind of rewarding participation in the BSSA, and we give those awards away at the awards banquet at our annual conference in November at Kalahari. So a lot goes into that. I also serve as the chairman of the Wrecker and Towing Committee. It's kind of an offshoot committee. We don't really have to deal with a lot of stuff with it, but I have talked to numerous sheriffs in the state with questions on the wreckers and towing and your impound lots, and there's also a lobbyist towing group for the state of Ohio that's always looking at different things with the legislature. So we are having a lot of talks with Bob and our lobbyist Mackenzie Davis about the different things that come up with the wreckers and towings. And so chairman of those two. I also sit on the legislative committee. As you said, I think one of the most important things a sheriff can do is stay up to date on what's going on around the state of Ohio and how it affects you and your community. Not everything you get at BSSA can be taken back to your county office and executed, but it is really nice to see what other sheriffs do. And then, as I said, the legislative committee, Mike Simpson from Pueblo County does just a tremendous job of staying up on our legislation that affects us. We meet monthly. We decide, which of those topics that we're going to support, which we're going to monitor in case it changes, and then obviously some that we oppose. And so that legislative meeting is really, I think, even sometimes more important than our board of directors meeting, because it keeps us up on what's coming and it keeps us prepared on what to do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to touch on a couple things. And one is, in the beginning of this, your response to the question, talk a lot about the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association and just how strong it is and how organized it is. And, a lot of that, I think we have to, and I think you agree with me, the credit goes to Director Cornwell and Bob and Mona Cornwell, and their longevity. I mean, they've been there north of 40 years, both of them, and I think that's got to be very unique. If you were to pool all the execs for their sheriff's states organizations across this country, I bet you'd be hard-pressed to find someone, let alone some two, that have more than 40 years experience, and that longevity keeps that foundation so strong, I think, for organization. The next thing I'll comment on, and you're exactly right. I mean, my involvement in the BSSA was jumping in with both feet right off the bat in 2013, and I surrounded myself with some sheriff friends like yourself that were involved already, that explained the strengths and the benefits for me to allocate the time to go and to be there. But one of the things I talk about is whether you're talking to your Kiwanis organization. Last night I was at the County Township Association meeting, and I have some sort of competency about issues that are coming out of Columbus when my constituents want to know what's going on with legalized recreational marijuana. Where's it at? And, if I did not spend the time to be involved in the legislative committee meeting, we'll just say just the legislative meeting, I don't have that knowledge, right? So then I become one of the sheriffs. And listen, I love these calls when my neighbors, or I don't care where you're at in the state, choose to call me and ask me a question. Hey, what do you know about this? What's going on with this? I wouldn't have the answer for them if I wasn't involved in it and try to pay attention and retain some knowledge that Sheriff Simpson and Mackenzie Davis and Bob Cornwell are giving to us. And I think it's just a huge advantage. And personally, I think it's been a benefit to me and helped me lead my staff or speak to the community about issues coming out of Columbus that come up here and affect us 2.5 hours away.
Well, and Jason, I mean, you can't say it any better than what you just said. Not only should it be talked about Bob and Mona's service and what they do for the association, and I agree. I mean, it's unparalleled to see, people have 40 years at one organization that have the wealth of knowledge. And, I've never had a conversation in my life with Bob Cornwell where he's told me what to do. He doesn't tell you what to do. He makes suggestions, but he'll be the first to tell you that he's there to try to do what's best for the association, what's best for every sheriff. And, the nice thing about him is it's really crazy, but like, I agree with you. I'll be at a meeting or I'll be somewhere and somebody will ask me about something and I've either forgot it or I haven't heard about it yet. And I'll send him a text and I'll say, hey, what's this House bill or what's that Senate bill or where are we at on this or where are we at on that? And I mean, I get a response, really quickly that just, and again, I've always told people I might not have the answers, but I usually try to find them and go get them. And it's just been a wealth of information, wealth of knowledge. And, it makes being a sheriff so much easier. You always are told, don't reinvent the wheel. If you want to do something in the state of Ohio as a sheriff, it's probably either been done or it's been tried or somebody's doing it. And you can usually just get the ideas and what they did and what worked best and what didn't. And Bob knows a lot of that. And I'll be honest with you on the other side of that too. There's a lot of different accounts that we have to manage on spending our money. And, there's a lot of law and a lot of rules that go with that. And the auditors in your county and the auditors at the state of Ohio sometimes have different opinions. And so Bob is just Bob Amona, but Bob is just great at giving, advice and experience. And again, Bob doesn't know everything, but Bob knows who to call to get that answer. And so any new sheriff that comes in, and it sounds like, we're going to have a high number of new sheriffs coming in this year. Every sheriff that I would talk to, I would just try to convince them to be as much a part as BSSA as they could be.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, we'll have to move on from the topic, but it does crack me up. At times I get a phone call from you pick it, sheriff, whoever, and hey, what's going on? Hey, Bob told me to call you because you've dealt with this before. So I answer the question. I think, how does Bob remember that? Yeah. Because he remembers, well, I was a part, I know, you're going through some family time right now, cleaning out your mom's house. You was talking about finding a picture just this week or a few days ago. We were together and Bob was there and I found this picture and there's a sheriff in there I didn't know. And what was Bob's answer? Oh, let me see it. I guarantee I'll tell you who it is. I mean, his knowledge is crazy. But hey, for the sake of time, let's move on. One more question before we take the ad break right here. And I just really love to hear the answer to this question from the prior sheriffs on the podcast. Matt, talk to your listeners about your passion in law enforcement. You've talked a lot about it leading up to this, but what is that passion? And I like to say, what drives you every day to get up and put this uniform on and go serve your citizens in Muskingum County?
Well, Jason, I think, to take this job, you've got to have that purpose of serving. And, again, I go back to my mom and dad, I think it was kind of instilled in me. But I think just being a person that can make a difference, I think is a lot of the reason. I get a lot of jokes about how much my phone rings. And, I'll be at the golf course and it'll be vibrating. It'll be somebody on there and I'll take a phone call, or I'll be, out to eat and the phone will ring, or somebody will stop over at my table and, my wife just gives me that sarcastic grin and that sarcastic look every time we go out to eat, because there's no doubt I wave at 3 or 4 people that think they know me like I'm their best friend, and I really can't remember their name. But, they know who I am. And I take a lot of pride in that, because one of the funny things I do is when I go into the county and I'm talking to somebody on a friendly basis, I'll ask them who their sheriff is. And then if they don't know, I kind of razz the sheriff a little bit about it. Like, hey, I'm Barry Anderson, didn't know who the sheriff was in this county. because I think that's important. I think people want to know the sheriff. They want to know that you're out there working, and but more importantly, they want to know if they call, they're going to get a response. And I campaigned on the fact that we're trying to make Muskingum County a safe place to live, play and raise a family, work and raise a family. And that's what I think, drives me, is just running an office. We're about 136 employees now. And you're running an office of men and women that want to be out in the neighborhood, just making a difference in this community. And, we're very fortunate. A lot of our people are born and raised right here in Muskingum County. They want to make this place safe for themselves and their families and their relatives and their friends. And, I just think that being available to everyone and making Muskingum County as safe as we can make it, I think is what drives me and drives our office to go out and try to make a difference in the community.
Yeah, it's a humbling thing, isn't it? And I love people. I love being out. Yesterday, we had our annual, if you will, Paulding County Township Association Fish and Chicken Fry. And so there's a township meeting before it. Then here comes the dinner portion. And so, my wife Jamie and my youngest son Jagger came over, and the three of us had some food. I kind of stood in line like I was in the reception line, just waiting for them to get there, just talking, shaking hands, people asking how my kids are doing and how the office is running. And then, you sit down to eat, and not every single person, but, 7 out of 10 people stop and acknowledge you, want to shake your hand. One lady says, "Can I hug the sheriff?" Absolutely. That is a humbling experience, man. And I think when elected officials lose focus on that, it's time for them to take off, man. It's a great job, and I appreciate that. Well, let's take our break, and we were going to come back. We're going to continue on with Sheriff Matt Lutz from Muskingum County. After this break, we're going to talk more about his sheriff's office and talk about some things that have gone on in the past in Muskingum County and maybe some things to the future after this break.
This podcast is sponsored by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. The BSSA is in Columbus, Ohio, and was established in 1931. The Buckeye State Sheriff's Association was formed to perpetuate an efficient organization of Ohio sheriffs and their deputies. BSSA provides an exchange of information pertaining to the duties, methods, and official practice of its members. The association also exerts such influence as may be necessary to bring about and preserve legislation in harmony with the needs of enforcement officials and the safety of the public. The BSSA supports the efforts of this podcast to promote Ohio sheriffs and deputies and their mission to serve and protect the citizens of Ohio.
Welcome back to the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. I'm Jason Landers, a sheriff in Paulding County. We have on today episode number 7, Matt Lutz. He's the sheriff in Muskingum County. Sheriff Lutz, welcome back. Let's talk a little bit more about your office. What's the size of your agency? Break that down for us.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So we're around 136 employees. We've got about 80 sworn deputies. We run a road patrol, obviously. We have a full-service detective bureau. I've got 3 members in my drug unit. We are a co-drug unit with the Zanesville Police Department, and then we belong to the Code Central Ohio Drug Enforcement Task Force. And then, of course, we run a dispatch center, communications center, and then we run a full-service jail. We're rated by the state to hold about 180 prisoners. And so we are a full-service facility. As I said earlier in the podcast, we're like the 5th largest in the state with square miles. We're about 680 square miles in this county. Our population is about 86,000. Some folks are talking that may go up here with intel coming into Licking County next door, and maybe seeing an influx of people on our western side of our county. But we're traditionally, the Zanesville City has a little bit more urban stuff, inner city stuff. We're traditionally more county, more rural, agricultural, community based, and we have a lot of farmers in our county, and we have a lot of miles to cover.
Sheriff, are you doing anything unique or new or anything that works for you for other law enforcement agencies or appointing authorities that might listen to this across Ohio, across the country, and this thing will go across the world today on Spotify, different platforms that this podcast is up on? specifically with recruiting or retention employees? Are you doing anything? Got videos going online that are pretty cool, some career days? What are you doing to attract new staff members to your agency?
Yeah, Dave, that's a great question. And coming to Columbus and listening to other sheriffs and hearing, some of them that are having trouble finding people, we have been pretty blessed with that. We have two feeder systems in our county. We have a Mid-East Career Center that serves multiple counties, and we have a criminal justice program at the Mid-East Career Center, and it's for juniors and seniors. And the guy that runs it, Phil Snyder, is a former deputy that I worked with, that worked under me when I was a supervisor. He's just a unbelievable young man, and he has really taken the criminal justice program to new strides over there. We've partnered since he's been over there. Since I've been sheriff, we've bought new equipment. We store it over at the Career Center for the kids to use, and then our people can go over there for training purposes. We're using one right now. We have a simulator. One of the things that we implemented was we go through the state mandated qualification course for firearms. But once you're done shooting on the range, you then respond out to the Career Center and you go to our don't shoot scenario training. And it has really enhanced our people and given them a little bit more practice and experience when out on the street and dealing with some of those situations. And so that's one example of how we've partnered. The other part of that is we've hired some kids right out of the Career Center at 18. They graduate, and we've hired them as civilians into our jail. And then those civilians have gone on to the jail, to the police academy, and have become deputies. And so it really is traditionally, for those in the sports mind, a farm system for me. And Phil just does an excellent job out there. We also have the college, Zane State College in our county, and John Gibson, who is the professor in charge of the 2-year Associate's Criminal Justice Program, serves as an auxiliary deputy for me. And so very connected to him. He also takes part with some of the academy stuff, the High Peace Officer Training Academy. There's one of those held at Zane State. We just recently had 5 of our corrections officers go through that and come out, and they're in a jail now as peace officers, and we have those guys and gals to pick from when we need a deputy to go out on the street. So those two big things have really kept us in applicants. We're currently fully staffed. We've had as much turnover probably as anybody over the years. I've teased a lot of people that I don't know that we've ever gone a full year being fully staffed without somebody leaving, but right now we're fully staffed. We have a little bit of a list of people that still want to come here and work, and we've been very fortunate in doing that. You mentioned job fairs. We do try to attend different job fairs. We have Muskingum University in our county, as well as Zane State will have different job fairs. We've been to Mid-East when they have their job fairs and trying to attract the younger kids in the profession. And we just, try to get out and do everything we can to try to make people understand how important it is for this position, and that we need good people to continue the law enforcement tradition.
We absolutely do. Let's talk a little bit about crime. I think this answer's pretty uniform across Ohio. What's going on in Muskingum County over in Zanesville? What are you folks dealing with today out on the road?
Yeah, I think, obviously we're always going to talk about the drug problem, and I'm sure most counties are doing that. Most county sheriffs are doing that. We're still seeing the fentanyl over here as the highest thing. Of course, obviously we have the I-70 corridor that comes from Columbus over to Zanesville, through Muskingum County over to Guernsey and over to 77 and can go north to Cleveland. But we're still combating that. I think that's why it will always be one of the top priorities for me as sheriff is drug enforcement. We've done really, really good, but with our borders the way it is, it's never going to be eliminated. So we're going to continue to fight on that. The other problem that we're seeing that I think personally has really overtaken our drug problem is the mental health issue that we have probably in this state, in this country. And I think that now our road people that are responding to calls are dealing with this probably on a daily basis, where we come across somebody that's just struggling with mental health. And so one of the things that we're proud of is we sponsor and host a CIT training academy, a week-long CIT training academy. We open that up for agencies in our county as well as surrounding counties. We have a lot of partners that partner with us in that, and it's a pretty successful program that we've been doing for several years. But I think anything that we can give back to our people to make them better equipped to be able to deal with the issues we're dealing with is best. And I think those two things right now, which really bleed over into all of our crime, is probably what we're focused on right now.
Yeah, it's a note I was making as you were talking, and I think we're probably 7 for 7 with sheriffs talking about drugs, methamphetamine, and other things. But it's not just that. So if you're one of those folks out there listening to this, they go, "Why are we spending so much in this drug fight, the drug war? It's never been won. It's not going to be won. You're wasting time." Well, it's not just the drug issue just spirals into so many other things, and I don't care if it's driving and crashes, if it's thefts, robberies, burglaries. It demands our attention, and if we don't pay attention to it, then crime really spirals out of control. So it's just it's important that that's at the forefront, I think, as law enforcement executives' mindsets and focus, that you have to pay attention to it to try and control all of these other things.
Yeah, and we've always talked about a lot of times they're either getting high on drugs and committing crimes, or they're committing crimes to try to get money to go buy drugs. And so it is all related. And, you have to try to stay on top of it as much as you can. And as I said, everyone that you can eliminate, any drug dealer that you can eliminate, better for your community. And even though we know there's going to be another one taking over, you still got to keep fighting that fight. And as you said, it definitely bleeds over into all the other stuff that we see.
It sure does. And we're up against the clock, Matt, but I want to talk about just an event that was a national event for you and a worldwide event for you that you handled about the time we met each other. Spend a little bit of time, if you will, and everyone in Zanesville is familiar with this, but folks listening across the state of Ohio might not realize that it happened in your county. Let's talk about the event with the animals, and somehow tell us about that in a short amount of time here. We don't want you to be late for your next commitment, sir.
Yeah, you're good. Yeah, I tell you, man, it was a crazy deal. And, for those that don't know, back October 18, 2011, we had what we called an exotic animal release. We had a guy in our county that really started off on the right foot by trying to rescue and save exotic animals. We're talking about animals like tigers, lions, crossbred animals in between, bears, wolves, monkeys, anything that you can think of that you see on TV from the jungle. This guy had tried to rescue some that were sick or injured, and it led to him basically breeding illegally, and then the collection just got out of hand, and we had some complaints on animal abuse. But at the time that we had those complaints, you had to have a dog license for your dog, but you didn't have to have any kind of license or permit to have a 300-pound Bengal tiger. And so there was kind of a task force that was working on it, but it was kind of stuck in the mud. And this guy ends up collecting 56 animals and had 56 animals on his property. And it's kind of a long story, Jason, but he got into some trouble with the ATF and some gun trouble, ended up going to prison. And while he was in prison, his wife and the caretakers just didn't have the resources that he was doing to take care of the farm. And so the farm was really downtrodden. It was, just run down completely. He gets out of jail after about a year, gets back to the farm, realizes he don't have, the resources to take care of it. And, so he takes his own life. And before he does that, he lets some of the animals out. He cut some of the pins, we get called to deal with the aftermath. And so, I was sitting at home. It was about 5:15, and just basically had getting ready to eat supper, and my wife was getting ready to do something, and I was just sitting down to watch the news, and I got the call. And the first call, we thought we maybe had one tiger and or lion and one bear that was out of their cage, and it came from the neighbor. And then, fortunately for me, I knew the neighbors. I played slow pitch softball in my younger day, and they ran the slow pitch softball league, and so I knew who they were, I knew where they lived. We had complaints from them before, and she went to her kitchen window and seen them in the pasture field with the horses, and luckily we got that call. Luckily they were home, and my responding shift just did a phenomenal job of getting there, kind of setting up a perimeter, giving us an evaluation. And when I got on the scene, it was kind of crazy of what we had. And, we called our special response team out. We ended up getting them in the couple pickup trucks, and they went on about their business, and we had to put those animals down. And, they were trying to get off the property. They were running loose. Of course, deputies in the state of Ohio, we don't carry tranquilizing agents. Even if you do carry tranquilizing agents, it's recommended that you have the animal contained, which we didn't have. You have to know how much to give them. Have to have resources on hand in case you get too much to bring them out of it. And of course, then you had to have the facility and resources to be able to put them somewhere. And so, called the Columbus Zoo. We called the Wild, which is a product of the zoo here in Muskingum County and Noble and Guernsey County. It's kind of on the border. And we had some experts come up from them, and our officers were able to contain the situation. We had to put down about 48 animals. We had 6 that were not let out of their pens, and then we had a couple monkeys in there that were thrown in there as well. And so it just put us on the map, and luckily we had a little bit of knowledge of the farm. We knew what Terry had there as far as we had seen that before, and we'd seen how he was trying to hold them, but we had no idea that he had accumulated that many. And so it definitely was a shock to the United States, to the world. I did a online interview with London, England, live, and then of course, real quick to finish up, but got appointed to Exotic Animal Commission. With the time, it was Representative Troy Balderson from the state of Ohio. And that commission was able to pass a lot of law that basically created permits and created inventory lists and created, counties to have emergency response teams and emergency response plans to an event like that. And I think the law basically really set it up to where nobody could pretty much get into that position again. So unfortunately, it took this thing to make something good come out of it. But a lot of times, unfortunately, that happens when something bad, it takes something bad to happen to turn into something good.
Yeah, and you took a little bit of heat, if I remember right, through that. And you had a very famous person come stand beside you in a press conference and kind of take some heat off of you and say, hey, they did the right thing and did what they had to do for the safety of the public. Is that right?
Yeah, Jack Canna showed up. I feel really bad now. Jack Canna has Alzheimer's and is not really capable of doing what he always did. But Jack was at a college at Penn State University, heard about what was going on, drove through the night. I got done about 11, 12 o'clock on Tuesday night. We knew we had early interviews, come back Wednesday morning, and I opened up a trailer door, and there's that Jack Canna in his alligator type jacket and his alligator type hat. And, he said, hey, I want to commend you on a job well done. There's never been a release like this that somebody didn't get hurt. And he said, what can I do to help you? And so I offered him a coffee and a donut and asked him if he could stick around all day. And he actually did interviews with me. We went from tent to tent. They'd wire you up, and we'd do live interviews. And so it was really a whole ordeal, and learned a lot. But I like to think, too, that, a lot of the training that I had through going to seminars, listening to other people, and the events they had helped us plan for that, and we were able to complete it.
Right on. Matt, before we finish up here, I know you got to get going. Is there anything we left out, any other topics you'd like to discuss?
No, Jason, I think we've covered everything. I would like to say, thanks to my staff who, basically allow me to go do BSSA things and to be out in the community when we're out doing campaign events and happen to be at meetings and stuff. And even when I'm on the golf course, I'm just a phone call away. So got a really, really, really great administrative staff, a really great staff that does this community proud. A couple of things that, one of the things that we bring up that we do at special events, I know you talked about that. We have the child ID cards that is a huge hit in our community. We'll take our machine out to different events, including the upcoming fair in a couple of weeks. Yeah, parents bring their young kids over, and we get their thumbprint and a picture on an ID card the size of a driver's license with their description. So if a kid goes missing, we have that card that the parent can present to law enforcement, and it's a big hit. And then we also are doing a canine ride along to school. We started as a fundraiser quite a while ago. I donate those to different benefits, and we auction them off. And then a canine officer will show up with the dog. We'll take the kid to school, and then he walks the canine dog in and does some talk about the dog and gives a presentation, and it just shows what the dogs are like. So it's been a big hit. We're helping out charities when we do it, and we're helping bridge that gap between law enforcement and our kids in our community.
Man, that's awesome. I want to talk to you more about that when we're together. Well, Sheriff Lutz, I'd like to thank you for being a part of today's episode. We would like to thank the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association for their sponsorship. For Sheriff Matt Lutz, I'm Jason Landers. I'll be right back here next month featuring another Ohio sheriff or deputy on the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Bob Cornwell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association, located in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. It was brought to you by the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association. With this podcast, we are striving to introduce you to sheriffs and deputies from around the state of Ohio and recognize their great work they do every day for the citizens of Ohio. For more information about our organization, Google Buckeye State Sheriff. Thank you.